Good day, dental professionals. Welcome to the Dental Flow podcast. We are dentistry's go-to resource for insights into the business side of dentistry. Your host, Benjamin Suggs, will be helping you navigate through the currents of the ever-changing dental waters. This podcast is packed with innovative practice growth strategies, actionable insights, and expert advice, all tailored to help you elevate your dental practice to the next level. If you're ready to dive in, so are we. Let's get into the flow.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dental Flow podcast. Today, we're excited to have a special guest. We are talking to Andrew Riepe from Crown Tenant Advisors. Andrew is one of the most well-known dental brokers in the Southeast and even beyond now, I think, Andrew. Maybe, but we're really excited to have you today. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and to chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in working in.
So I come from a commercial real estate background. Obviously, I've been in this field since 2004. I started my career after a minor league baseball playing career that lasted 3 years. Thought I wanted to be a college baseball coach, coached at the Division I level for 2 years and realized maybe that wasn't the path for me long-term. Got into commercial real estate working for a national tenant rep firm, focusing on mostly office tenants and transactions, and sort of by happenstance, started working with a few dentists, other healthcare folks, and realized there wasn't anybody in that space in the early 2000s, just focused on helping them either find space, negotiate leases or purchases, and truly represent their interests through the process. So 2009, fast forward, I started Crown Tenant Advisors. We're a boutique healthcare commercial real estate focused only on helping healthcare clients on the tenant and buyer side of a transaction. So what that means is we completely align with our clients' goals and objectives and make sure that their real estate does as well. And it's 100% conflict-free every step of the way. Our job is to get them the best real estate deal that we can at the right location for their practice and always be on their side of the table throughout the process.
Gotcha. And where were you when you were playing minor league baseball? In a small town or a large town?
Well, yeah, so I spent a summer in Lowell, Massachusetts, about an hour north of Boston. I was with the Boston Red Sox organization, and then spent parts of 2 seasons with Augusta Green Jackets here in Georgia.
Wow.
And also in Sarasota, Florida, in the Florida State League. So
nice. That's a pretty sweet place to play baseball in Sarasota.
Yeah,
awesome,
in the summer.
Well, so let's jump into it. So you mentioned in your intro there, more focus on tenant representation in these medical, dental, real estate transactions. Can you just talk a little bit about what that means, and how does that make you different from other brokers out there?
Exactly. Most commercial real estate firms have generalists who will typically either be a landlord rep or a tenant rep, or sometimes work both sides of the transaction. By being just solely focused on the tenant and buyer, and in the healthcare space, makes us unique. There's not many folks like us. And it also makes sure that we get the best outcomes for our clients. It's more consultative. We're not selling anybody on a space because we're getting compensated if they lease this space or that space. We take a broader approach. We want our clients to feel like they're making the right decision every time they make that real estate decision. And by being on their side, showing them everything, walking them through that process, we end up with better results for our clients that way.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, it always makes me think of why if you purchase a house, you hire your own real estate broker. You don't necessarily, it happens sometimes, but you're not necessarily going to use the seller's broker. It's odd to me that dentists are out there purchasing practices using the representation with the same representation as their landlord.
Yeah, you're exactly right? They're looking at it from, if they're representing the landlord, they've got a fiduciary responsibility to that landlord to get them the highest return on their space or their sale. Likewise, we're making sure that we're leveling that playing field, and we've got all the information. Our clients are leveraging the real estate market with us involved to get the best outcome, versus just going in one direction where that person has a inherent interest to that landlord or owner.
Gotcha. And I remember, so you and I are both based out of Atlanta, so we've crossed paths quite a bit, and we've shared quite a few clients for sure. So I remember, I won't name her because I didn't ask for permission to say her name here, but one of our clients, she started in Georgia. And I remember there being an issue with her landlord about a year or so in. I think you know what I'm talking about with the something to do with Kroger or something like that.
Yep. It was a Kroger anchored shopping center. We had a client that we had helped her through the process of finding the location, negotiating the lease. And as we kind of go through that with legal counsel, there's certain clauses that we want to make sure that we address in that lease. And one of them was the relocation clause, right? So a lot of times landlord will ask for the ability to relocate a tenant if they need the space or they've got a bigger tenant. In retail settings, that's typically we're going to get that removed the vast majority of the time, unless there's a special circumstance. So that's what we did. We negotiated basically relocation clause out of her lease. And the landlord came to her about a year and a half in and said, hey, we want to put a fuel center where your section of the shopping center is. And she called me in a panic and said, what do I do? They want to move me. They want to move me kind of tucked away in a different part of the shopping center. I'm going to lose this visibility. It's going to be terrible for the parking and the patients. I said, well, hold on a second. I know we got that out of your lease. They do not have the right to do it. So you do not have to actually move, right? Unless you want to. So we were basically able to negotiate a better spot in that shopping center up front, right on the road, that had become available in about the same square footage. And the landlord paid for the entire build out, the relocation, et cetera. There was no downtime for her. So it could have been a really bad situation as a new practice going into a shopping center and then being forced to move to a less desirable location within the same shopping center. Actually turned out for her, to end up being windfall. And she's super successful today. And that was kind of one of those things that you see and you hear about. And there's a lot of clauses like that in leases that if you're not on top of it and you're not having the right people look at and try to mitigate the risks involved with some of these leases, you can end up in a very bad situation.
Oh, and that's huge. I mean, a year and a half in, that's still startup phase. That would have been catastrophic if you had not put that clause in there. So that I think that just a good reminder for dentists to use someone who specializes in what you do to do these deals. I mean, it's a long commitment in a lease, so you got to protect yourself for sure. So I wanted to ask you too. These days, based on what you're seeing, like, what do you think? And I'm probably not an easy answer to say one over the other, but what is the most ideal place to open a dental practice? Is it a rural town, more in an urban city area, retail, or in one of those medical buildings or an office building? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I don't think there's necessarily any one right way to do it, right? There's lots of practices that are in high rises that are super successful. I think as a startup, it is important, if you're going into a competitive area, to put yourself in the best location you can from a visibility, accessibility, parking, right? I certainly think there's a lot of opportunities. There's less competition in some of these rural markets. If a young doctor is wanting to be or willing to commit or to commute to a rural area, they can be successful, no doubt. And a lot of those rural practices are very, very successful because of the competition factor as well. I think the one thing we try to stress or we try to really understand too through the process with our clients is what is the vision for their practice, right? So we want to make sure as we're going through this, if you're committed to practicing in a certain part of town and you want to serve a certain patient base or provide a certain type of dentistry or focus on a certain model, that we are aligning that real estate that fits that, right? Because ultimately, I think if you do that, you can still be successful in competitive markets. It just might mean you got to do more marketing. You got to do something different. You got to provide something different to outcompete. But I think by and large, I've had plenty of practices too have gone the other way and said, listen, I want to be within 30 minutes. This is where I'm going to live. And so I'm going to raise a family. I do not want to go to the too rural of an area. So let's get the next best thing. And I'm going to make it work. Right. So I think if you have that attitude and you have that conviction and you're going to work at it, you can really be successful a lot of ways. Right. So there's not any one way to do it. I think that's going to make you successful. I think there's just a lot of different things that you got to consider when you're looking at the whole picture of ultimately what is your practice going to look like and what do you want it to look like?
Absolutely. And I feel like there's certainly dentists out there that have no problem with that, hour-long reverse commute, listen to a podcast, do whatever. But then there's others who, no way, they don't want to be that far from home.
Yeah. And I think one other thing to point out sometimes too, when you're doing research, we've had it where, a consultant or demographic study will say, hey, I got to be in this area. Well, that area doesn't have any competition because there's no commercial space yet, right? So where's the next best area we can be to serve those patients that we know may be moving to a growing area,
Right.
Where there's going to be the space that actually you can do it. So that's sometimes too, well, this is a great area. There's nobody here. Well, there's nobody there because there's no space yet.
Yeah.
So it's sort of keeping all those things kind of in mind as you're going through the process.
Absolutely. And this is a strange question, but I just thought of it. On average, how many locations do you view with a dental or a medical startup before they find the one that they?
Yeah. Again, depending on the market or the sub-market that they want to be in is going to kind of dictate that. I mean, sometimes too, we'll have startups, for example, that are thinking of a couple different markets. So we'll end up surveying several different areas. I mean, there may be a list, 3 or 4 lists of 8 to 10 properties that could potentially work. Obviously, we try to pare down that list and focus on the true prospects, and utilize a whole host of things, whether it's competition studies that we perform for clients, pull demographics, understand kind of, okay, what makes this area more appealing to this area, and then tie the real estate in those areas. But yeah, certainly when we're looking at an area, again, being on the tenant side of things, I want to make sure my clients and our clients are seeing everything that could work. And then obviously we're paring that down to get to what is actually the best option at the end of the day.
One. Awesome. And I've noticed a lot of our startup dental clients that we've worked with for marketing, they get a pretty sizable, I'm trying to remember what they call it, but basically build out money from the landlord as part of their lease agreement. What is that called, and how common is it to see that?
It's typically called a tenant improvement allowance or an allowance. It's very common. I think part of it is going to depend on the landlord, the rental rate, the lease term, the type of building. For example, a medical office building that's underwriting transactions, knowing that they're going to have to provide more allowances to attract medical and dental into those buildings, will typically provide the highest amount of tenant improvement allowances. But the rate is adjusted sort of accordingly. Retail landlords, it's going to depend whether they're a large national REIT that may have deeper pockets, or a mom and pop landlord that may cut you a deal on the rate or free rent, or come up with some blend of the two. But, I think in today's market, the construction costs have continued, obviously, over the past several years to escalate, where it's not impossible, but it's definitely not as easy to work within a budget if we're not getting an allowance and a somewhat healthy allowance, right? Because you still got to equip it. You got to provide technology. You got to have marketing spend, some working capital, all those things that go into a successful startup that still, we got to make that work. So it is important to negotiate that as aggressively as we can to get the most money from the landlord ultimately.
Right.
And it's just going to vary whether it's X per square foot or Y, depending typically on rate, lease term, landlord capability, and what their overall goals are too.
Got you. And would you say that a dentist or a medical practice is a pretty high value tenant for a landlord? I mean, as far as attracting other businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And that's part of our leverage too, right? I mean, you're getting, top quality tenant, even if it's a local operator, a local doctor, the odds of them practicing for a very long period of time in the space, paying rent every month, are very high, right? So they are very attractive for landlords, and oftentimes can be one of the tenants because of that. I think I heard a stat that the average dental office is in the same space for about 17 years. May not be the same practitioner, but once the space is dental, it's going to be dental for a very long period of time. And there's value there. Obviously, there's a ton of value and upside for the landlord to know that they can, if they're going to invest and they're going to, go into the hole to provide allowances and things like that, that they're going to get their money back over the period of time. And certainly we leverage that.
Gotcha. And I imagine that, the failure rate for dental practice is so low. It's got to be nothing like other businesses that they're putting in those places. I mean,
you're exactly right. Right. We talk about some of the lowest default rates across all industry. So sometimes we've got to kind of educate landlords on that fact, and certainly get third parties, lenders, et cetera, to provide their statistics to get them to see the light. Because sometimes they look at it and go, well, geez, this isn't Starbucks, but so why am I doing this? Well, here's why, and don't take my word for it, but look at the statistics and actually, the facts of low default rates, great quality,
Right.
And good tenants, obviously.
Gotcha. And if a dental startup, a dentist out there listening is considering doing a dental startup, how long in advance should they engage you guys to start that process? I mean, I know everybody has like, oh, I want to open next March at this date, and sometimes things happen that doesn't happen. But how long in advance does the process take for you to find the perfect spot for them?
I think it's a great question. I always say, like, if you're thinking about it, if someone's thinking about it, have a conversation with us. We want to kind of plan along those timelines, even if it is 2 years out. We'll have the conversation, right? There's no obligation. But what I would typically say in today's world, from start to finish, depending on the how the space is currently laid out and what work needs to go into it, you're realistically, I'd give yourself probably every bit of 8 to 12 months,
Gotcha.
Right? To start the process, take your time, plan it, design it, construct it, etc. I'd give yourself 8 to 12 months in today's world. It used to be a little bit faster, but with lead times and construction timelines, that's going to be a big chunk of it. We're seeing, call it 4 months of construction on a new dental build out. So you kind of work your way backwards from there and give yourself enough time to be able to fully to find it, to focus, and to fully negotiate letters of intents, leases, and get plans and permits and all that done. I think you're going to be in that range to be fine. But even though we have plenty of clients who are thinking a year and a half, 2 years out, that we kind of start that process. And then, sometimes things change. People go, I was thinking a year, but gosh, if I can get in there sooner, or let's go. I'm ready to do this now.
And I imagine you see so many potential spaces all the time that if you talk to a dentist 2 years ago and they told you what their ideal, and you see the perfect spot, then you're on your radar. You can let them know, like, here's a perfect opportunity for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm constantly, anytime I'm driving, I'm always looking at things and paying attention and mentally going, oh man, that'd be a great spot. We're constantly getting marketing information from developers or new plans or things that might be coming down the horizon. But man, that'd be a great spot for a new office. So I'm constantly kind of building the database or filing stuff away that I get, email blasts on, et cetera, just to kind of have in mind and to continue to, if I'm working on a project for a specialist in an area, and it also kind of helps us know what's going on in that market, what the submarket is, what the other opportunities are, even for a different healthcare client, right?
Right.
Kind of sort of see it and learn it. And, with all of us and all of our brokers here working on projects, we're a resource for each other as well, right? So if someone's done a project in a certain part of town within the past couple of months, and kind of talking to them through and getting their insight as well, I think is certainly helpful.
Gotcha. And we talked about like the dentist who's starting their first practice, but talk about a dentist who started a practice a few years ago. They have a lease. It's gonna, let's say it's a 10-year lease and they're in year 6. How early should because y'all do a lot of renegotiations as well, which is huge for these dental clients, that they can, again, use the leverage they have to get either a better deal or whatever it is. So talk a little about that. Like, how early should you be engaged on a renegotiation? What do you guys do as part of that renegotiation process?
Yeah, great question. Obviously we'll be staying in touch throughout the course of the practice is life. So we kind of know, certainly we know when the lease is coming up, but we want to be in touch throughout that lease too, because you may be thinking of doing a second location or an alternative transaction. And I think we've got a lot of clients who end up going to buy their own buildings and build that dream office or do ground up construction. So some of those lead times take a little bit longer. But as a general rule, if you're thinking that you want to stay in that same space beyond the current lease expiration, 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years. I like to have more time than less, because time is leverage when it comes to renegotiating deals. And, and some of that is going to depend on what the market is at that point in time. If rents continue to escalate and we still have low vacancies like we have now in certain sectors, or have things soften a bit where all of a sudden we're getting different concessions, or if we went to a new space, we might get A, B, C, and D that we can use with our current landlord to level the playing field, or get allowances again to update the space. Obviously, if you're in a space for 8 to 10 years, typically some things are going to need to be redone or touched up or refurbished, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that we've got enough time to be able to leverage that to end up at the, at a less than or at market deal that we would get. I should say better than, right? Less than a random, but better than or market deal that we would get somewhere else if those terms are not in line with market at that point in time. So I say that too. I think things to be thinking about too, because we've got a lot of clients that do end up going the purchase route. So knowing that too, where we can kind of parallel process, what does this look like, model out those costs, understand what's the best decision based on where you are at your practice, what your goals are, what your investment goals are, to kind of have more of a holistic approach, if you will, than just your lease is up. Let's redo another lease, right? We want to make sure that we're on top of all those things as far as we can be.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it. So can you tell it just lastly, what states are you currently operating in? Because I feel like every time we catch up, it's another state that you're in. So
yeah, so we're here in Georgia. We're in Florida. We're in the Carolinas, Tennessee, Indiana, and we're licensed in Alabama, and we'll be back there soon.
Gotcha. Also, and how many brokers are you working with now? And you're under you?
There's 11 of us now at Crown.
Wow, keep growing. That's great. And really want to thank you for being here, man. And I will just add a note. Like, I've known Andrew for a few years now, and we have worked with a lot of the same clients. And I do have to say that I have never heard anything but completely uber positive feedback about working with you. The experience they've had has been great. So anyone out there who is looking to start a new practice or potentially looking to renegotiate your lease, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Andrew or one of his people on his team. If you could just tell us where's the best place for people to find you.
You can go to our website, www.crowntenantadvisors.com. If Ben wants to share my contact information, cell phone, email, feel free to reach out anytime. Always love to talk about real estate and dental specific real estate as well.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you being here, Andrew. This has been really informative, and I think people will get a lot of value from it. So thank you for taking the time to do it.
Wonderful. Always great. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us for this Dental Flow podcast episode. If you enjoyed today's discussion and wish to stay updated on future episodes, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with colleagues and friends. For more insights and discussions on dental marketing, we encourage you to continue riding the Dental Flow wave and tune into the next episode. Keep on smiling, learning, and flowing with the Dental Flow podcast.